Before we start, I have a short announcement about the procedure in the case of a fire. The fire drill is not due to take place during the meeting. If the fire alarm bell sounds continuously, people should leave the building by the nearest exit. People should then disperse away from the site for at least 20 minutes before returning. Thank you. As a change from our previous start at this meeting, I would like us to stand and observe a minute's silence to reflect on the day ahead. We will then have some short reflections on the day from a different member of our community at each meeting. To start this process off, we are fortunate to have the Lord Lieutenant David Lang with us today. I hope that everyone feels it is possible to start the meeting in this way, and so could you please stand? Thank you very much for doing that. I'd like to introduce the Lord Lieutenant to give us his short reflections on the day.
Good morning to you all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the invitation to join you. Thank you for allowing me to come and join you and start off this morning's procedures. Now, I've decided that it was perhaps best to come in fairly ordinary dress today rather than in uniform. And that is really to show that, is there an issue with rank, privilege, symbols of uniform, dress, or anything like that? And if anybody was to feel that they have an issue, they're very happy to go and find some fresh air and leave the chamber for just 3 minutes. I will not talk for long because I don't think that's appropriate. I am an incredibly lucky man to be in a position where I can speak to the whole community. I don't speak for them, but I hope that I can speak to them and that I can listen and hear and help and, where necessary, give, I'd call an old-fashioned word, some succor. It's really trying to improve people's morale and how they feel about themselves, their lives, and the place where we live. 3 minutes is not long to cover all of the issues that there are in the county, in the council, and with our people. And, all I can do is do the best I can to cover, I think, the way I see life. If I was given 3 minutes and told that was it, if I was told that last night, perhaps I'd have been very glad to have known that I was going to get up this morning and have 3 minutes. As it stands now, perhaps it is not enough and you would like to have a lot more because there is so much to do. I do not envy you in your positions, and I'm just incredibly grateful to you all for the jobs that you shoulder, the responsibilities that you all take on behalf of your communities, and the work that you do with and for them. I say that I'm not in uniform. There are two things I've got. I've got my blue tie with sort of as near as red possible. I've got pink bits in it, which are hairs, and they're running. So whatever you do today, I'm sure there will be a large number of hairs that you set running. In my blazer, the jacket I'm wearing, I do have badges that go with the lieutenancy. The good thing about them is that they have two items on them. One is the crown, which you'd expect. The other is the rose, and how appropriate it is that for Northamptonshire, the centre of what I would call the country, We have the rose at our hearts, and it's acknowledged that that rose is at the heart of the country, and that therefore we are as well. Symbolism can be important, and I just brought with me my speech notes, and that is in the form of one flag, and all I have to do is find the right way out. And I'm just going to drape this over the lectern, and the centre bits are the important things, and if they can be seen, that's vaguely right. Now, there are certain elements which are important to me, and they are important to many, many people. The most important in terms of the county are the two bits towards the top. There is a bridge, and that infers that the blue that the bridge is sitting on is a river. We have in the county's terms the River Nen, and it doesn't matter whether we are one county council or whether we are two unitaries. That river is still going to run through both those communities. We need the bridge to be able to link those communities and to be there and to be seen to be strong, and for it to be stable and for it to do the job that is its purpose. The bridge, again, is the bridge of the communities that we're all representing. They come from many diverse roles, positions, and sort of groups, colour, whatever. And again, that bridge is what we, I think, are all about and what we stand for. It is making sure we are strong, despite what we hear maybe in the media, the constant drip feeding this river that's almost a flood of bad news that has been passing, I think, the televisions and radios over the last 2 years. However, that is not the core of what is this county. These two counties, whatever they will be, the responsibility that you have now to drive a positive position for a good future under two counties. And I think that here we have, I'm ignoring the book because the book is important to me, but it's also important to every bit of community. It reflects every religion that we represent. It also reflects the law and the order that you all as councils represent. And without some form of code, ethics, morals, ethos, we cannot have a stable society. So we put that to one side. We then come to the bottom and the top of the flag. The bottom is the motto, which is "Let your light shine." The top is the lantern held high for everybody to see, a light that can be seen. And it is very important that you, whatever you think you are able to do, that you can show that light to the communities that you're in, that you do it well, it is bright, and that you make it effective. So I leave with you the thought that you, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, should let your light shine. This is a good place to be, and we should have a good heart about it. It may be difficult, it may be low in morale, but with what you can do, I think we can still maintain the quality that we think is here, and we can drive a very positive future. You have an interesting morning in front of you. I wish you well with it, and I look forward to meeting many of you over the coming months, the remainder of the year, and the remainder of my term, which is only going to be another 9.5 months now. I hope I will have seen many of you in that time. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the Lord Lieutenant for those reflections. Thank you. Starting with the meeting itself, we start with apologies from councillors for their inability to attend the meeting. Starting with Councillor Patel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Apologies from Councillor Romans, Robin Brown, Judy Sheffer, Scott Edwards, Sylvia Hughes and Michael Tye.
Thank you. Councillor McGee.
We have one apology for lateness from Councillor Brookfield, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Stanborough.
Dennis's mic is working. 100% attendance, Chairman.
That's good. Councillor Hakewell?
Absolutely 100% attendance.
Thank you for that. I've also got apologies from Honorary Alderman Derek Lawson and Priscilla Padley. Moving on to the minutes of the meeting held on Thursday the 23rd of May, there's a couple of alterations to inform Council about. Councillor Robin Brown and Councillor Winston Strachan attendance was not noted, but this has been included in the minutes that I'm hopefully going to sign today. Is it Council's wish that I sign the minutes? Thank you very much. Thank you. Item 3 is notification of requests for members of the public to address the meeting. On item 6, Mrs. Jean Lineker is going to present a petition regarding children's services. On item 7, we have at the moment 3 speakers, Martin Sawyer, Luke Adams and Chris Riches. And they're going to speak, as I said, on item 7. Item 4 next, our declaration of interest for councillors. We're all aware of the terms of it, but I would like to read it out a bit of it just to reinforce it. Councillors are reminded of the seriousness of not declaring a disclosable pecuniary interest. If a councillor declares such an interest, they must remove him or herself for the whole of the item. Has anyone an interest to declare? Okay, thank you. Chairman's announcements are our next bit. I'll try and be reasonably brief about it. I've got a range of announcements. One is I'd like to announce the civic service that we intend to hold, and that's going to be at St Peter's Church in Weston Fable, Northampton, and it's the first time that it's been held in St Peter's, and I know that they're very much looking forward to it. It's going to be on Sunday the 20th of October at 3 o'clock, and so it's a date for the diary. I've got 1 or 2 other proposals in the pipeline, and we're going to hopefully announce those prior to the next council meeting. You might have noticed that the University of Northampton has kindly supplied some drinks cups, and I've got one here for our use today and for us to take home. The spare ones are in the rotunda if anyone's not got them, and they're all part of the campaign to restrict the use of single plastic cups. So it is obviously a good thing to be part of, and I know that the council is taking part in that initiative as well. It's also with great pleasure that I announce former councillor and current Honorary Alderman Priscilla Padley has been honoured with an MBE in the honours list for services to children and families in Northamptonshire and Peterborough. And I know that the Leader of the Principal Opposition, Councillor Scott, would like to also say a few words at this stage. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I was one of the elected members in this chamber when Priscilla was also a member of this chamber, and she had a very strong view about children. She did a lot of work with charities within the county, and when she moved down to, I think it was Devon. So I'd certainly like to congratulate her. Our group would like to send their congratulations to her for winning this award, which is well deserved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Finally, I'd like to mention that we're going to raise the flag for the Armed Forces Day on Monday the 24th of June at 10:30 here outside County Hall. There's also an Armed Forces Parade on Saturday the 29th of June, and this will start at the top of Abingdon Street at 10:30 and come down towards the Market Square, with troops performing a tribute to the Lord Lieutenant, the Mayor of Northampton and the Chairman of Northamptonshire County Council. Following that, the visitors can enjoy music from military bands and singers in the Market Square, as well as visits to various stalls with organisations such as the Royal British Legion, Help for Heroes, blind veterans, etc. So it's something that, if you can make it, would be really appreciated. And in previous years, we've been a bit slight on numbers, and I think it would be really good if we could make an effort to attend the Armed Forces Day. So those are my announcements, really, and that takes us on to the petitions next. We have one petition from Mrs. Lineker, and I'd like to ask her to introduce the petition to us now. Thank you.
I'm going to hand over this petition, and it's going to be ongoing. There's 1.5 pages already gone to the Children's Commissioner from me. I have not heard from him yet. I'm going to hand this over. It's a bit dirty because someone put blood on it. She cut her finger, so she can own up. So I'm going to hand this over, and there will be many more to come. I am against the Independent Trust for Children. Can you tell me what they're going to achieve? Because it won't stop children being abused. Now, I need to know who's going to be accountable for this trust. There's a lot of questions I need to ask. Is it going to be accountable to the councillors or down to the government? If it's down to the government to pay, because this council don't have any money. If it's going to be down to the government, that means every one of you will be paying. I don't mind paying a little bit extra for children's services. I saw something on BBC TV the other day, something to do with the Prime Minister's job. There was about 5 of them. One of them's been knocked out, and I can see why. The problem was, 4 of them turned round and one of them turned round and said, that's the ex-mayor of London, I forgot his name now, but he's been on Facebook a lot. The problem was, he didn't even mention trust. He said, and a lot of them have said, it's down to the government on the accountability and the Council for Children's Services, and that's what I agree with, okay? I am astounded that so far so many cases are coming forward from children and having to go to court. That's me. Because I was abused myself, I nearly had to go to court. So I'm finishing now, and I'll take it in your hands that I am going to continue with this, and I'll continue to ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. We come next to opposition priority business, and before we hear the motion, we've 3 speakers who want to address us, and I've got it in no particular order, but perhaps if Mr. Martin Sayer could start us off, that would be really useful.
Thank you. Just a small correction, it's Martin Sawyer.
My apologies, thank you.
I couldn't help but notice that this council has received some very negative press coverage over the past few years for various reasons, and I suspect that there's more to come. But I don't want to dwell on the negatives. This council has the opportunity to do something massively positive today in passing the motion calling for the council to declare a climate emergency and put Northamptonshire on the path to becoming carbon neutral by 2030. This should not be seen as an easy option just because this council will not exist in a couple of years' time and won't have to deliver on this commitment. this council still has a responsibility to lead and set an example for its successor councils, the fabled West Northampton, North Northampton unitary authorities. Many councillors have complained of not being allowed to get involved in the decision-making processes of this council, and most of the public are at a loss to understand what the purpose of this council is anymore, as all the decisions are being made by unelected commissioners appointed by central government. But this gives you a great opportunity to get stuck into this. Go over the road and discuss with your borough council colleagues how best to get zero carbon Northamptonshire up and running. Because from discussions that I've had with borough councillors, it's clear that the lack of communication and cooperation between NCC and NBC is already frustrating early attempts to start the zero carbon process. So I call on this council to declare the climate emergency, commit to being carbon neutral by 2030, and then go further, taking the lead in directing and assisting all the other councils involved in the make-up of the new unitary authorities to achieve zero carbon. And then go even further. Protecting and enhancing biodiversity are key aspects of achieving zero carbon, and I want this council to either establish a biodiversity action plan or work with the other councils to develop one in advance of the new unitary authorities. But then I want you to go even further. Poor air quality in Northampton is not being addressed because of this council's failure to properly engage with the borough council. This may be a public health issue, but without dealing with the transport and travel issues of this town and the other towns across the county, you won't achieve zero carbon. So you've got lots to do. I shall leave you to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could we ask Mr. Luke Adams to come down next?
Hello. My name is Luke and I'm 23. In 2030 I'll be 34, and if we don't get the carbon neutral by then, I'll be very disappointed. I'm scared for my future if we don't do what's right. There is so much going wrong in the world environmentally. We are facing the sixth mass extinction. 60% of mammals, reptiles, fish and amphibians have gone since 1970. Rising temperatures and runaway climate change will destroy my life and the children of today's future. It will mean a shortage of food, habitat loss and increased extreme weather events. The IPCC, Panel on Climate Change, say that climate change is real, emissions are rising every year, and I'm facing a future that's looking very bleak. Please don't just vote this motion just to seem good in the public eye. You're going to not exist in 2 years. You need to act on this and make sure that when the new councils are set up, that this commitment is still there. Please tell the truth and declare a climate emergency and agree to a net carbon zero in Northamptonshire by 2025. 2030 is too late, and even 2025 is a little bit too late. We've known about this for years. Why is it only until now that we are doing something? I would like to see the creation of a People's Assembly to ensure this commitment is followed through. This is an emergency that can't be forgotten about when the new councils form. Would the council set up a People's Assembly to ensure that this is treated like an emergency, because it is one? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our final public speaker is Mr. Chris Richards, if he could come down as well.
So I just want to start today by saying that we've all been complicit in our response to climate change, and that includes me. But you all have a chance here today to implement real change that will benefit many future generations to come. We have 11 years until the damage that we do to this planet becomes irreversible. I know that many of you in this room are Conservative councillors who are concerned about money, but the fact is that if we leave this longer, it will just become more expensive. This is a problem of today, not tomorrow. I'm 18 years old and frankly scared for my future. We can't carry on our current path of destruction, or else the planet that I'll inherit as an adult won't be fit for purpose. Northamptonshire is one of the greenest counties in England, but if we carry on how we are, we'll see an end to that. The fields that many of you enjoy walking through on the weekends will turn to barren wastelands unless something's done to stop this. It's also time to restore people's faith in democracy and actually do some good. Me personally, I emailed my councillor last week about this and I didn't even receive a reply. Many would argue that politics is broken at the minute, but it is an amazing thing that can bring about great change to benefit everyone, and it's time to send that message out by supporting this motion. I ask that all of you here today support this motion, but also that if you do, you should take it seriously. This is not just a political show, this is people's lives. Words must be turned into actions to get something done about it. This is why I ask you to commit to creating a citizens' assembly in Northamptonshire that can help decide the council's response. We're living in a climate emergency. It's here, it's real, and it's time to do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you. Next, I'd like to invite Councillor Stamborough to move the motion. Councillor Stamborough.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So, I'm very pleased to stand before you today and propose this climate emergency motion. Some people might think that the most important issue facing the country right now is Brexit. I'm prepared to argue that there may be one or two more important issues than that, and this is most definitely one of them. When was it? Towards the end of April, the 26th of April this year, I, and I expect many other people in this room, was absolutely inspired by the young people in Northampton who led a march through the town to highlight the issue of the climate emergency. I thought it was a fantastic thing to do, and we, as a group, need to respond to that. We, as a group, need to say to the young people of Northamptonshire, we are listening, we hear what you say, and we are going to do our bit to ensure that what you fear, the thing that is making you scared for your future, does not happen. I think it's absolutely vital. So the challenge is there for us. We must respond, surely we must. And I hope members today, cross-party, will agree that we should. So, what is a climate emergency? Well, I tried to find a definition. There is no hard and fast definition. A climate emergency is what you think it is. I think you only have to look around you. You only have to look at the evidence that's being put forward. You only have to watch the weather. You only have to look at the amount of plastic everywhere to know that something's not right and that something needs to change. And when the only people who seem to be arguing there is no climate emergency are Donald Trump and Nigel Lawson, then you know there is a climate emergency. It's just obvious. So, what are we being asked to do? We're being asked to be carbon neutral by 2030. So we need to ensure that this county has a zero carbon footprint by then. If we can do it sooner, I think we should, but that's what the motion says. And if we want to find out as a council what we can do about that, can I recommend a seminar being held by APSI in Liverpool on the 12th of July on that very subject. Perhaps we should send someone along to find out what actions we can take here at Northamptonshire County Council and to encourage our partners to do the same. I really would like to thank the three public speakers who have come here today, especially Luke and Chris, aged 23 and 18. Martin, I won't reference your age, but you all spoke really well, and I absolutely agree, Martin. We must ensure delivery, and we must cooperate with our partners. This has got to be a team effort across the whole county. All councils in the county need to get involved. All councils in the county need to sign up to this. Luke, your challenge to say that we will do what we say we will do. I sincerely hope that we will do exactly that, and by 2025 if we can. But I absolutely agree, we must act. And Chris, you set out a bleak future if we don't act. So we must act. I think that's vital. So, fellow councillors, it's I really hope that you feel you can support this motion today. I'll end with a challenge to you, a related challenge, I have to say. Please reduce your use of single-use plastics. When you're in the supermarket doing your shopping, as I'm sure you all are on a regular basis, have a look at what you're buying, have a look at how much plastic it's wrapped in, and do this one very simple thing. Pick an alternative product that has less plastic around it. That's a very, very small start we can all make. It's not much, but it's something. And if we all do that every time we're shopping, that will deal with at least part of that problem. So please support the motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Could I invite Councillor Hakewell to second the motion next, please?
Indeed you can, Chairman. I'd like to second this motion and hold the right to speak later in the debate. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We have an extensive list of people that want to speak to the motion, and in no particular order. Perhaps Councillor Clark could start us off.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When we get Liberal Democrat motions in this council chamber, you have to take them with a certain pinch of salt. In this case, I'm afraid a very large pinch of salt. I think we have to be quite frank, based on past experience. This motion basically is about playing to the gallery. It is about trying to appear virtuous, and it is about trying to get a good, positive headline from Johnson Press, which is not difficult. If we are to take the motion seriously, let's meet it head on. Councillor Stanborough is like a hotelier, a restaurant owner. And let's say he owns Stanborough Towers, and one Councillor Chris Stanborough, invites us into his restaurant. And there's the menu, Councillor Stanborough offers us all these wonderful things, zero carbon emissions by 2025, 2030. And we all say that's very good, it looks very enticing. But there's something missing from the menu, Councillor Stanborough, and that's the price list. Where's the price list? Where are the costs? What is it going to cost the council taxpayers of Northamptonshire to realise this goal of yours? I'm sure you've got the costs, and you'll give us the figures in your summing up. But let's move on to the second question, assuming you don't have the costs. Who, Councillor Stanborough, is going to pay for this lavish menu? Is it going to be the council taxpayers of Northamptonshire? If it is, say so. Are you proposing you increase the council tax here by 5, 6, 7, 8-fold, with or without referendums? Possibly. But again, council taxpayers have got votes, so that wouldn't go down very well. So if you really want to hit somebody who hasn't really got a voice in this council chamber, you go for the easy target. You hit the business community. You tell businesses, we're going to increase, if we can, your business rates, we're going to introduce costs, various taxes to try to raise money to realise a reduction in carbon emissions from all the logistics companies, for example, which are coming into Northamptonshire. It would cost an arm and a leg. But be honest, tell us who's going to pay for it. Tell us how much it's going to cost us. Because on this side, I can't imagine anybody going into a restaurant and ordering something which doesn't have a price tag attached to it, however enticing and seductive it might be. Fess up, be honest, give us the facts.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it was appalling listening to Councillor Clark. We know, don't we, that in the country there's been this huge upsurge, not just by the young people in our society, those who are going to inherit this earth with all its plastic and waste. We know that feeling's there. We know it's growing. We know we've got to do something about it. If we hire a consultant to give us a view on something and pay that consultant money, we go with the results of that normally because the consultant is a specialist. there's hardly any of the researchers, of the professors, that concentrate on climate change and the likes that have come out with any other view than we have 12 years to turn things round before it really starts affecting our planet and our children's future. What on earth don't you understand about that? This is why I support this motion, because for the sake of our children, we need to start addressing this issue. The 30 years in the motion, 2030, sorry, is a reasonable time. It's very much in line with the view by the professionals, very much in line with the climate change conference that was held where David Attenborough gave a very moving speech. I urge you to support this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Meredith.
Well. I can't believe what I've heard this morning coming from Councillor Clark. I think, Councillor Clark, I think you should be ashamed of yourself. We heard from the three speakers about climate change. Well, I just want to give you some facts, some real facts, and perhaps Councillor Clark, in some point, can answer these questions at another time. Firstly, I want to say, if anybody in this chamber has heard the seriousness of what is happening to our wildlife, I'm going to tell you that earthworms are now becoming an endangered species. Yes, earthworms. What does that mean to our wildlife? Lots of wildlife depend on earthworms for their diets. And would we ever believe that hedgehogs are now an endangered species? I've recently set up a wildlife area and doing a survey regarding hedgehogs. And hedgehogs are now becoming a rarity because they feed on earthworms. What is happening to the earthworms in this country? Well, it's quite simple. We are taking up all their land. I know we need houses, but we're building on land where earthworms can survive. And this is a serious aspect. And for Councillor Clark to come and say that Councillor Stramber is playing to the media is absolutely appalling. And I hope, Mr. Chairman, that you will have a word with your colleague and tell him that is a wrong thing to do. It's a wrong thing to do because what we're doing here is trying to protect our children. We're trying to protect the two young people that come and spoke, and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. And for him to make that statement is, as I said, is absolutely appalling. I'm going to support this motion. Just one other thing I'd like to talk about, if I've got time, is about our involvement in setting up these charging vehicles around Northamptonshire. I think we've got about 10 in place, which is not enough to encourage people to have electric cars. How many people in this chamber actually got a hybrid car?
You're running out of your allotted time, Councillor.
Okay, I'll end now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Our next speaker is Councillor Hallam.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I rise to support the motion I think it is really important, and obviously as portfolio holder at the Borough for the Environment, we've already started a lot of this work, and just this week we had our first climate change forum meeting, which went extremely well. I'm quite nervous of speaking about the borough in this chamber because former Councillor Sawbridge used to regularly admonish me from the chair for talking about the borough, but I do think it's important on this issue that we work together. And I do just have one slight issue with one of the first public speaker that said that the borough and the county weren't working on this. Well, Councillor Morris and myself will be able to tell him afterwards about a fantastic project that we've been working on with our two hats on, involving the Woodland Trust and replanting trees down in Far Cotton. And what's brilliant about this project is it won't cost this council, the county council, not going to cost them a penny. All we need is the permission for the Woodland Trust to plant the trees. Now, it's not quite on the scale that the former Mayor of London, Boris Johnson, managed to achieve, but it's actually about starting small with these things and seeing where we can progress them to. So I do think there's examples of us working well together. Clearly there's more to be done because it's such a big and complex issue, but I think that's something that little project that Councillor Morris and myself, Chair, have been involved in is a really good little project to be involved in, and it's something that hopefully we'll be able to expand out to other areas. Happy to support the motion today.
Thank you very much for that. Moving on, Councillor Goff next.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think anyone really seriously denies in this chamber that climate change is real and that humanity has an impact on the environment. You look back in history, you see warm and cold periods which correlate to human population growth and decline. So this isn't a new thing, it's happened over the years, but obviously with industrialisation it does have a bit more of a significant effect. I do have concerns about this 2030 target, and I think Councillor Clark is fair in asking for the costings and for how much this will cost the council, because I do think that with the financial situation we've had at the county council, we should be aware, because we don't want to crash this council, we don't want to cause business to go under. I think it's a fair point that we have to have all the facts. I've got a 3-month-old daughter. I want her to grow up in a clean and prosperous country. I don't want to see her having poor air. I don't want her having extreme climate events causing problems for millions of people, mass starvation, that kind of stuff. But I also don't want to see the economy collapse in the process. So we need to balance this out, and I'm concerned about declaring a climate emergency is not going to be the way we do this. I think we need to have more information, more detail. I think that we need to start off with the first most important thing is people's individual choices, what people make, and it has been mentioned by Councillor Stanborough. I'm aware that there's going to be a zero-waste shop opening up in Burton Latimer, and I think that's a great idea. I think we should be encouraging those kind of things. I think we should be shopping in those places ourselves. It's those kind of choices. It's whether we decide to switch to electric cars, and those kind of things that we need to do. We need the technology, and it's like electric cars, it's hydrogen cars, it's using more renewable energy. Maybe if we're lucky in the future, we might get fusion technology, but that's always just in the distance. And of course, if I did read an article, someone completely misunderstanding what fusion technology is, because it's nothing to do with something like Chernobyl, because it's a completely different process. So I am concerned about declaring this emergency, but I do think we need to have discussions. I want members of the public to come in. We are an assembly ourselves. We are elected members of the community to stand here. But I do want to see people come in. I want to be convinced that we should be declaring a climate emergency, so I will listen to the rest of the debate. But I think we need to be serious about the costings, and we need to see some of the things that can be done without us crashing businesses, without us increasing taxation to ridiculous levels. We saw British Steel, for example, going under due to some of those.
If you could finish off, I'd be grateful.
So I want to see the detail before I make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Roy next.
I have prepared a speech, but I am quite aghast with some of the stuff that I've actually heard today. But first of all, thank you, Councillor Stanborough, for bringing this motion to us, and also thank you to the members of the public who spoke very eloquently and passionately, and I do think that adds quite a lot to our considerations as a chamber on issues. Doing work on something as huge as climate change isn't just the hotel or the restaurant that Councillor Clark talks about. This is the major issue of our time. I'd like to be a lot more informed about this than I am, but doing things in relation to climate change is something that the County Council is uniquely placed to do. As one of the largest organisations in this area, we are uniquely placed to make various decisions at nil cost to ensure that we're on our way, on our track to becoming carbon neutral by 2030. Yes, it is about individual actions, and I'll take on board the challenge in my shopping next time I do it. But it is also about what big organisations do with their investment. So a number of local authorities have disinvested in their local government pension schemes from fossil fuels. That's a nil cost, but it's actually making a big public statement. In terms of the kind of things that we do, we're already doing things around climate change. In the last budget, and the budget before, there was things in relation to kind of electric vehicles. Now, it may not be enough, as Councillor Meredith says, but that means that actually there is a historic basis that we have in the past accepted this as a priority and a direction of travel. A key thing for me would be to mainstream action on climate change. So my background is as an equality professional, so on every single report we have a reference to whether an equality impact assessment has taken place. The actual concept of equality impact assessment actually came from environmental impact assessments. Again, we're uniquely placed at nil cost to make those assessments over the decisions that we could take. Just on a final point about biodiversity, I do think this is a really, really important issue.
Could you conclude your remarks, please?
And as a major investor in our country parks, I think, again, we're uniquely placed to make some clear decisions about this and a direction of travel that can and will make a difference. So please support the motion, and please support the Eco March Northampton young people in their campaign.
Thank you. I don't want to disturb the flow of people, which is why I've not sort of kept saying you're down to the last 20 seconds and that. But I think it is incumbent that 3 minutes does mean 3 minutes, and I don't keep having to remind you. So if we could bear that in mind, I would be most grateful. And that... Sorry? Thank you very much for that. Our next councillor is Councillor Smith-Haynes.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to say that I don't know as much as I should about climate change and about how we can come to a carbon neutral society. And secondly, I'd like to say that I'm a hypocrite because while supporting the aim of carbon neutrality, I drive a diesel van. So I guess in that I'm agreeing with Chris, who said that we're all complicit. I am complicit in causing the fumes that create climate change. I don't know whether we are whether 2030 is a realistic target, but I'm the kind of person that needs to work to targets. And so if we don't have that target there, I think that we are not going to put as much positive energy into this as we should. I am a school governor and I'm the eco-champion at my school. Somebody said about protecting our children. I forget which speaker it was. So I'm going to rant on about parents parking outside schools. One of the biggest issues that I get from my constituents is from people who live around and opposite schools. They tell me that they have parents parking there with the engine running for up to 30 minutes at collection time, the same sort of battle in the morning. This is not right, and this is another example of us all saying one thing but doing another, being complicit. I don't know if it's possible, but I'd like to throw the idea out there. Could we put, for example, 100 yards no parking barrier around all of our schools? Would that be a start? Someone said about starting small. It would help to encourage our young children to walk, because a lot of us have forgotten how to do that. And it would, although it may be moving the issue from one point to another, it's starting small, it's getting there. It's helping to change ways of thinking. I'll finish there, but I hope that can be taken on board.
Thank you very much. Councillor Davenport. Yes, Councillor Davenport.
Now, I would like to support this motion. Now, I went to the meeting that Councillor Hallam arranged at the borough, and it's a forum of different political persuasions, and we had someone there from the Youth Forum, and it was very informative. Now, if someone from the county could also go, I think that would help for the cohesion of councils. And if all the other councils can have similar kind of motions. I mean, I'm really saddened by what Councillor Clark said, and disappointed, because Councillor Sambra is not the kind of person that just does things to showcase himself. This is a really important motion, and I feel really passionate about it because I feel bad enough already. The fact that my generation and the generation before, we've stripped this country, this world of money. We're in trillions and trillions of pounds worth of debt due to the greed of bankers and whatever, the banks collapsed. Our children can't even afford to buy houses these days because of that greed, and we're all sitting pretty in our own houses. And not only can they not afford that houses, they're now going to be saddled with the fact that we've stripped the entire earth of resources because we are not doing what we should be doing and trying to conserve them. And when it comes to recycling, I said the other night, now I didn't want to recycle. I was a busy mum, I had too much to do, and well, got to do this, got that. But I do, and it's just become a part of my life now. So that, we're all doing it on a daily basis. So all we need to do is to keep adding to that. But we do need the help of government. I mean, government do go on about climate change, but we do need more grants when it comes to solar panels, because I would love them. I'm confused by all the different offers. But also with the infrastructure. I mean, this council could have been doing more with infrastructure because we're highways, we're consultees to planning. We could have been told you must have cycle paths, you must have safe walking areas, you must have housing developments that can have buses access them because they're all cul-de-sacs. buses won't go in there. So there is quite a lot we could have been doing already, and it's just about adding. And like Councillor Haynes-Smith said, it's the little things that all add up. And maybe if we had a little forum of our own, or we went over to the borough and joined with others, we can think of all the small things we can get people to do, like not idling the car, etc., that will really, really help. It doesn't have to cost a fortune, apart from the infrastructure, but I think we need government help for that, if that's what they want us to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I've been notified of 15 speakers, and we've got around about halfway through that. And I think that will give the whole motion a really good airing. So we've got about another 6 or 7 names that have been notified to go. But I think that will be sufficient speakers for the motion. So our next councillor is Councillor Mercer.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know about other people whether they're qualified in this field. I'm a scientist, chartered engineer, chartered statistician, a couple of other things as well. So I am qualified in this field, and I've studied it quite extensively. And I'm only this far from it. I'm only 7 inches from it already. I can state categorically that there is no question whatsoever but anthropomorphic climate change is a fact. It's happening, and it's now almost reached the point where it's unstoppable. However, dealing with it is a matter for calm reflection, not just rushing out and declaring an emergency. I'll give a reason why I say that. As an attempt to try and reduce the use of fossil fuels, there has been subsidies put on renewable ones. Sounds a good idea. Except that what's happened is large areas of the third world have been flattened to put in palm oil plantations. Some species of orangutan are likely to go extinct as a result of this, so the best intentions are actually having the contrary effect to what they should have. They're killing species. Now, this isn't the only effect of it. It's also impacting on the poor in the third world, who are having their farming areas bought up and replaced by more palm oil plantations, so that we can feel good about ourselves while people in the third world starve. That is not what we should be doing. Locally, we've got the same syndrome. 20 years ago, we started going fanatical about modal shift. This is a really well-intentioned idea, but when you go fanatical about it, you get the wrong result. I'll give an example of this. In the centre of Rushden, we've got loads of traffic lights. A new development happened. Planning permission was granted for a lay-by. An officer from this council vetoed that lay-by. I met him there and asked him why, and he said, well, it will make the bus stop in the middle of the carriageway, which will stop traffic, which will make people slow down, cost them time, and they will therefore say, I don't want to use my car, and stop using the car. That didn't happen. All that happened was we got more traffic jams, more fumes, and more pollution. So by being fanatical about it, we got the exact opposite result that we expected. Now, this isn't the first time we've had climate change. Climate change happened about 400 or 500 years ago when European diseases reached North America. It wiped out the 90-odd% of the people living on the east coast of North America. As a result, their farmland went back to jungle. We had the Little Ice Age as a result. So yes, climate change exists, but if you're trying to deal with it and address it, you've got to be careful about what you do, and just don't go around declaring emergencies and try and get everybody to stop using their cars, because you'll have the opposite effect of what you intended. I don't support the motion.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What a brilliant debate so far, a complete contradiction to some more eminent politicians that had a go at this and made a complete hash of it earlier this week. Can I firstly say that I support the sentiment of the motion as it is written, but the timescale is unrealistic, I'm afraid. The problem with the motion is that it will hugely impact on our residents' lives. thousands, tens of thousands of our residents rely on work in the logistics industry because of our location in the country. And here we have an economic vision for Northamptonshire and for the Oxfordshire-Cambridgeshire arc as we move forward. People's lives depend on logistics. And the fact that we have heavy goods vehicles travelling the length and breadth of our roads. Only this morning, the Chief Officer of SEMLEP paid a huge upbeat message to this county's finances. Now, far be it from me to suggest that the originator of the motion is trying to gain political support for this. I wouldn't believe in saying that for 1 minute. But let's be honest with people. If we're going to achieve this, and I've heard now, we know that 2050 is there, then I heard 2030, then I heard mention of 2025. Let's be open and honest with the residents of Northamptonshire. What is this going to cost them? You know, we have got to tackle all the issues that are at the forefront of Northamptonshire. Adult social care, children's services, and also creating 2 exemplary unitary councils. In a nutshell, Mr. Chairman, I support the sentiment of this. I believe it is premature. I believe fundamentally it is something that is of national and international importance, and when we go into unitary councils. But we've got so much to do in this council in a relatively short period of time, and we need to prioritise on that before unitaries come into place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Eakins.
Thank you, Chair. Just pick up on 2 main points here. It's been people talk about electric vehicles. Let's be certain here. Carbon neutral electricity is not the same as renewable electricity. In fact, it's now thinking that there's some European countries who are heavily investing in fossil fueled power stations instead of going for a cleaner option. That's fact. Mr. Chair, I'm sure everybody in this room today is much aware of what's happening within their environment and the world. We always want the best for our family, and I certainly do, including my unborn grandchildren that will be turning up hopefully by the end of the year. Mr. Chair, I'm certain that this council should and will endorse a policy for carbon neutrality. We must admit that we need climate change. However, setting a date of 2030 is not only optimistic, but it's also unachievable. It's optimistic, as I said, in 10 years' time to create that. It won't happen. We know it won't happen. It never will do. The reason why it won't happen is that there are no plans or infrastructure in place to deliver it within 10 years. Mr. Chairman, I can't support this motion as it is today. I can fully submit a motion that not just calls for a neutral carbon footprint, but also can ensure the viability, the sustainability and the delivery of a carbon footprint, not only by the members of the public, Mr. Chairman, but also by the community, the councils, businesses and governments. And all this, Mr. Chair, has to be done within a realistic and achievable timescale, but not only for the members and the people of this country to adopt, but also, as my colleague behind me said, the third world countries who are not signing up to, who actually are the biggest output of shall we say, carbon within the environment, which is changing as it is today.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hakewell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got 6 declarations of interest. They're called Thea, Joss, Edie, Nicholas, Meg and Max, and they're born and they're on this planet between the ages of 18 months and 8 years of age. I was astonished at the cost of everything coming out from some people and the value of nothing. It's a bit like the dinosaur denying the little speck in the sky. Mr. Chairman, I don't presume to be the only one to doing these things, but I own an electric car, completely electric car, which when I get home at night, I plug it into a socket, and by the morning, it's ready to go. That's quite clean. When I sit outside a school, I'm not polluting anyone, or in any traffic jam that I'm in. Our house is heated by air source heat pump. We got rid of oil. Our hot water is heated by a solar thermal panel on the roof, and the house was built with triple insulation to make sure we didn't lose that heat. We talk about, can we do anything now, Mr. Chairman? This is an eco-brick, and I'm sure you all know what an eco-brick is. It's a bottle stuffed full when you can't avoid getting single-use plastic from your shops. You stuff it full, that brick goes off, and it can be used to build, and it can be used in the third world as well. So everybody can do that from tonight when they come home. Margarine, we always used to buy in tubs. We now buy butter. So we've reduced our margarine. Here's a milk bottle. We now don't get milk in plastic bottles anymore. So we've really slimmed our bin at home by not having those single-use plastics coming forward. You say, well, what can we do? Mr. Chairman, that is a photograph of a verge that we got planted in Kettering Borough showing wildflowers. Isn't it lovely? I really look forward to the elections when these people who barrack on actually changing climate. So there are wildflowers on a verge in Dingley a few years ago. Kettering Borough Council already has a pollinator strategy which we can put into the new unitary authorities. It's gone through all the issues, not a big cost issue, that we can do in order to have some biodiversity and to bring in, Mr. Mayor, the other aspect, which is pollinators and those aspects. I love it that these people are barracking me. It's wonderful, isn't it? That they have no idea.
There's only 15 seconds left, Mr. Akewell, bear it in mind.
Thank you for being the first one that you asked me. There's only 15 seconds left. I understand that. Morsley, which is in my area, which I've looked after through the time since Morsley came, has an eco meadow. So we have all the things that we can do. And there we go. There's the university. There's a plastic cup, which you can reuse. And here are some black beans in a former coffee jar that we got filled up in a fill-up shop, which I think has already been mentioned in Barton Seagrave, where you can go and fill up without using plastic to do so. So if anyone in this chamber thinks they've got no role in this or doesn't support this motion, then they really will not be elected in future.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, and thank you for the samples as well. Councillor Brown next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was actually impressed by how sensibly worded the motion was. I was impressed by Councillor Stamber's motion because I think it's far less prescriptive than it could have been. I think he's left it fairly open for us to try and adapt to these circumstances as well as we possibly can. Yes, he set a target that's ambitious, but where would we be without ambitious targets? Why shouldn't we set an ambitious target? You know, it's that old saying: if you aim for the sun, you might reach the stars. So, you know, let's go out there and let's be ambitious. But I fundamentally support the motion. We do need to be doing our bit. We're not going to solve climate change here in Northamptonshire, but we can do our bit, and we can try and mitigate our impact on the environment, which, to me, is fundamentally a no-brainer. It's like sensible home economics. It's like switching off the light when you leave a room. You know, not only is it good for the environment, but it saves money at the same time. Many of the steps we can take will be not only efficient, but beneficial for the environment. Certain colleagues of mine, who I respect greatly, have talked greatly about the cost to the council. I would respectfully suggest that actually the cost to future generations and the overall cost would be far greater than, you know, a minor monetary value in the short term. Councillor Mercer raises some very, very important points about the law of unintended consequences. So I think it's really important to bear in mind that this isn't just about doing something, it's about doing the right thing. And so when we sit down to discuss what steps we can take to move towards carbon neutrality, then we actually think through properly the unintended consequences of the action that we take. But action we must take, and I'll be supporting the motion today.
Thank you very much. Councillor Chowan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we've all established that climate change is actually a real issue that we all need to take very, very seriously. Mr. Chairman, I wanted to say that actually we've all got a responsibility in this room. You know, most of us have children or have had children, and, you know, we're supporting the future generations. And as my colleague previously spoke, we won't be able to make those changes in Northamptonshire, but we can actually make a decision today and support this going forward. I was doing some research on this and found that there is so much that can be done, but as Conservatives, we have made quite a few changes towards this step. So I just wanted to share those facts for those that aren't, you know, sure of what these facts are. We've introduced the requirement for large retailers to introduce a 5p charge, causing distribution of plastic to fall by 83%, and that's just by plastic bags alone. We've introduced the legislation to ban microbeads in cosmetics and other products as well. We've doubled maximum litter fine to £150, something that the Borough Council colleagues would know more about. We've committed to improving air quality in some of the most polluted areas. We've introduced one-off tax to diesel cars, something that another colleague of mine mentioned as well. We've also introduced stronger protections for animal welfare by introducing CCTV in slaughterhouses. And we've also introduced tougher sentences to those abusing animals. So, Mr. Chairman, I think that it's really important to understand. I mean, there was a young gentleman who said, who made a statement that as Conservatives, we don't care about the environment. And I think there are a lot of assumptions that are made about Conservatives in general. We do care, we are passionate, and I would like to say that I will be absolutely supporting this motion today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Scrimshaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm pleased to see that there does appear to be general support for this motion, although, of course, there are one or two dissenting voices. Councillor Stamborough asked us to respond to young people by saying, we are listening, we hear what you say. Well, I'm listening, I hear what they're saying, and I hope that most people in this chamber will do so. But actually, this is bigger than this. This same motion, or versions of it, are being passed up and down the country by councils all over the place, including Conservative councils. What it does, it shows an aspiration, it shows a vision, it tries to send a message, and we as councillors, as the councillors, are leader in the community. Now there's been talk, hasn't there, about the cost and the impact on local business and presumably the economic development, and that really is important and we shouldn't ignore that. But this whole issue is being consumer-led. There are plenty of progressive and ambitious businesses that are absolutely buying into the climate change agenda, and they are getting new customers and creating profits and wealth because of that. And if there are other businesses that are a little bit behind the times, well, I don't want to sound like a market forces conservative, but perhaps, you know, that's how the market works. So I would suggest that, you know, we need to stand up and support those businesses at the same time of supporting future generations and our local residents. There is more work to do. There are more details to sort out, but by supporting this motion, we will support, in general terms, the vision that's been put forward today by Councillor Stamborough and the residents who spoke on it, and we will be sending a message to our public that this council does care. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Eales.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank Councillor Stamborough for presenting this motion. I don't think it's particularly ambitious at all. I'd like to thank the public speakers for addressing this. And I wasn't actually going to speak, but some of the contributions from people that can only be regarded as dinosaurs, frankly, warrants a response. You know, I thought it was pretty much now unanimously accepted that climate change was an emergency. Indeed, the government, your government, Councillor Clark, have accepted that climate change is an emergency. And I think if this council wasn't to pass this motion today, you've got to wonder what kind of message, what kind of statement that would send out to our residents. This authority is presently at least, the authority responsible for highways. highways and the pollution that come from traffic movements are one of the biggest contributors to poor air quality. If we don't accept that there's a climate emergency, then how on earth are we going to remedy some of those problems, some of the quick fixes that Councillor Smith-Haynes referenced earlier on? We've got to be playing our part. And to answer the question about how much is it going to cost, well, I'll tell you what the cost will be. It'll be the cost of humanity, the extinction of humanity, the decimation of future generations. This ain't something that we can't afford to do, something we can't afford not to do. And if you don't pass this motion today, all you'll do is confirm once again to the people of this county that this authority is the unholy wart on the backside of this fine county. So please, rethink, don't be led by the dinosaurs, and pass this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. I'm coming to the end of what I really wanted as a list of speakers, but I am conscious of I'm almost omitting 2 or 3 people, and on my original list, Councillor McGee said that he wanted to speak, and I was minded to give him an opportunity and extend the list, and that would leave just him and Councillor Golby still to speak, if that's acceptable to everyone. I know on Councillor Gonzalez de Savage is waving his hand about, but I think we have had a really good airing of this, and we've been on it for some considerable time, so I am minded for Councillor McGee and Councillor Golby to finish us off. Councillor McGee.
Thank you, Chair, and I hope this is not part of my time, but we do have a pre-council meeting across the groups, and there is a list given out with names on it, and 2 of them, including myself, have not been asked to speak. It begs the question, why do we bother attending a pre-meeting if we don't stick to the agreement? But Chair, what I will say, Mr Chairman, is that I welcome this motion, as have 90 to 100 councils up and down the country, and they've agreed it across party. So I'm hoping we can do that today. Mr Chairman, local government is a very important driver when it comes to this important issue. We can make a big difference through housing, transport, waste, and even looking at food waste. So we've got many, many different things we can do. And in fact, many councils up and down this country, regardless of the cuts from central government, have found innovative ways to try and help in this issue. So we can do that too. There is no doubt about it. Talking about starting electrical companies, etc., providers, local councils can do that, and some have. So we've got no excuse that we can't do anything and it will cost lots of money. There are ways and means, and we should be working towards that. And as said by some of the colleagues on your side, you are doing some of it. We just have to look at some ways of making it better, doing more. And that includes, Chair, and you know, being a good socialist as I am, I would love us to work towards a cooperative, a fair and a resilient and a sustainable economic vision where businesses themselves put some of that profit back into the environment. That's not a big ask. They should be doing that anyway. And in fact, many big businesses do that. But we have got to push that in Northamptonshire. And Chair, we could go away today and hopefully get this passed. But what I would like to see is a future paper coming and saying, this is what we would do to try and achieve that within that date. Because otherwise, all we've done today is have a good rant. We need a paper brought forward, and that includes, if you believe there's risks to it too, the risks should be involved in that paper. But we should have something back here so that we can see together, working together with partners, how we can move forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Golby.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. As we've heard, there are some differing views on our side on the motion that we've got presented before us today, and we have to, and I respect those views, and we had a debate on this at our group meeting, and we've offered all of our members a free vote on this item. But what I would like to say, and where I come from, is I want to support this motion, and we've got to be very careful what we're tying ourselves into, and the points have been made that we're on that transition to unitary, Can we afford to put a lot of weight and a lot of power into producing new reports within quite tight timescales? I think the answer to that is no. We've got to be very careful on the resource and capability that we know where the focus has got to be on some of the things we're doing in this council. But I just wanted to point something out. I'm sure Councillor Stamborough, as a detail person, did his homework on this and is fully aware that actually Northamptonshire does have a climate change strategy which has been in place since 2010. It's been updated twice, with the latest iteration running till 2020. So the current strategy follows government carbon emission reduction targets of at least 80% of carbon emissions to be reduced by 2050 from the 2008 Climate Change Act. So I think this is a mechanism to maybe move this conversation forward. We've got a strategy there that runs until 2020. So let's bring in and feed in some of the points that have been very well made across the floor today into that. Let's find an appropriate place to pick this up. I suggest that it goes into one of the work streams of the new unitary programmes, and we've got to be mindful of some of the points maybe we can have, like Councillor Roy said, we have equalities impact assessments. Maybe we can have a climate impact point on a lot of the reports and some of the things that we do get sent. But personally, where do I come from on this? It's what motivates me to do the role I do is my family and the future of my family. And we hear people like Attenborough talk about catastrophic ecological events happening if we don't do anything. And it's incumbent upon all of us to start by doing something small. So today I'll be supporting this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Could I invite Councillor Stamborough to comment on the motion?
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks to everyone who's spoken in the debate. I'll try and address everyone in the time I've got available. Start with Councillor Michael Clark, as he was first on the list. The usual rubbish, I'm afraid. Michael asked about the cost of doing this. The question was posed, and I'll pose it again. What is the cost of not doing this, Councillor Clark? What is the cost of that? Councillor Scott, thanks for your support. You were absolutely right in everything you said. Councillor Hallam, NBC's leadership on this is really welcome, as is your support. And let's give the Woodland Trust the permission to plant trees at Farcotton, please. Councillor Gough, whilst not denying there's climate change, I think you're saying you're probably against the motion. Wasn't quite sure, but we'll find out in a moment. Councillor Roy, it is the major issue of our time, and we are uniquely placed to act. So let's act, shall we? Yes, please. Councillor Smith-Haynes, a brave admission that you are complicit and a hypocrite. I promise I won't ever quote you. But we do need a target. You're absolutely right. We need something to focus our actions, and we do need to act, and I'm hoping you're going to support the motion. Councillor Davenport, thanks for your support. Made some good points around housing, and I have to say, I agree. If we make recycling a part of our everyday life, then other actions will follow as if they come naturally to us. Councillor Mercer, as a scientist, clearly you're an expert, and you said climate change is a fact, so I was disappointed that you then said you weren't going to support the motion. And I thought you characterised the whole issue in quite ridiculous terms, I have to say. Councillor Griffiths, supporting the sentiment but not the timescale, and then proceeded to echo some of Councillor Clark's points, so we know where he stands there. Councillor Eakins, the Council should and will endorse a policy for carbon neutrality. Yes, they should. They should endorse this one, today, now. Councillor Hakewill leading the way. Clearly, Councillor Hakewill, what can I say? Some things we can learn from there. Councillor Brown, can I say thank you for your support and thanks for the leadership you showed today. Fantastic stuff. Councillor Chaman, we all have a responsibility, I absolutely agree, and I hope your colleagues will follow your lead and support. Councillor Scrimshaw was the first, I think, to say that many other councillors are doing this. They've recognised this is the right thing to do. We should recognise it's the right thing to do too. And let's go forward with this with a positive attitude for business. We will make it so. Councillor Eales, thanks for your thanks and your support. You're right. Let's send the right message out. Councillor McGee, and thanks for your welcome for the motion, and thanks to the Labour Group for the opportunity to put forward opposition priority business today. And let's join the 100 or so councillors who have supported, and we'll get businesses on board when we do that. And finally, Councillor Golby, Yes, you were right, there were differing views in your group, and I think you're probably therefore right to have gone for a free vote. And I'm glad you want to support this motion, and I'm glad that you will support this motion. And thanks for pointing out the strategy and what that says. What we're seeking to do is just tighten up on that. So thanks for everyone who supports. Sorry if some of you won't, and I'm asking for a recorded vote on this motion, please.
Thank you. We'll now move to the recorded vote.
Councillor Richard Auger. For. Councillor Fiona Baker. For. Councillor Jane Birch. For. Councillor Lizzie Bowen. For. Councillor Wendy Brackenbury. For. Councillor Rebecca Breeze. For. Councillor Judy Brookfield. For. Councillor Adam Brown. For. Councillor Robin Brown is absent. Councillor Pinder Chowan. For. Councillor Michael Clark. Against. Councillor Julie Davenport. For. Councillor Annabel de Capel-Brook. For. Councillor Gareth Eales. For. Councillor Scott Edwards. Absent. Councillor John Eakins. Against. Councillor Matt Golby. For. Councillor Andre Gonzalez de Savage. For. Councillor Rob Goff. Against. Councillor Martin Griffiths. Against. Councillor Jim Hakewill. For. Councillor Eileen Hales. For. Councillor Mike Hallam. For. Councillor Amy Howard. For. Councillor Dudley Hughes. For. Councillor Sylvia Hughes is absent. Councillor Cecile Irving Swift. Abstain. Councillor Andrew Kilbride. For. Councillor Graham Lawman. Against. Councillor Stephen Legg. For. Councillor Malcolm Longley. Abstain. Councillor Arthur McCutcheon. For. Councillor John McGee. For. Councillor Alan Matthews. Abstain. Councillor Andy Mercer. Against. Councillor Jill Mercer.
Abstain.
Abstain. Councillor Dennis Meredith. Councillor Meredith? Are you for? Thank you. Councillor Ian Morris? For. Councillor Sandra Naden Hawley? So absent. Councillor Steve Osborne? Against. Councillor Bill Parker? For. Councillor Suresh Patel? For. Councillor Victoria Perry? For. Councillor Anjona Roy? For. Councillor Sam Rumans? Absent. Councillor Adel Sadigov? Absent. Councillor Bob Scott? For. Councillor Mick Scrimshaw? For. Councillor Judy Shepherd? Absent. Councillor Chris Smith-Haynes? For. Councillor Jason Smithers? For. Councillor Chris Stamborough? For. Councillor Danielle Stone? For. Councillor Winston Strachan? For. Councillor Michael Tye? Absent. Councillor Alan Walker? Against. And Councillor Malcolm Waters? For. Thank you very much. Carried. 37 for.
Yeah.
8 against. And 4 abstentions.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks.
The results of the motion was that it was carried with 37 votes for, 8 votes against and 4 abstentions. Thank you everyone for contributing for that. We move on to item 8, business items, and 8A is the Northamptonshire Improvement Board update, and I'd like to invite Councillor Golby to move the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very pleased to move this report. It has been put forward before Cabinet, I think a couple of cycles back, but as a part of the governance, and the original idea of the Improvement Board was that we're looking to be as open and transparent as we can, and which is why it's before us at Council today. So I'm very happy to put it to Council and recognise the input from Mr Steve Freer, who's the Chairman of the Improvement Board. I've got to recognise the support we've had from the LGA and the other partners that have regularly attended and contribute at the board. The list of all the attendees are in there, although there are a couple of minor amendments that do need to be made. But I think, as I say, the whole idea of the Improvement Board was to demonstrate to our partners in this transition through unitary and through many of the well-publicised issues that we've had, that we are trying to do the right thing to put the finances and the services of the County Council back on track. And I think if you read through the report, it does recognise that effort and recognise that progress is being made in some areas, but also does recognise the challenges we still have. So I'm pleased to put the report to Council, Mr Chairman, and look forward. I think in September, October, we'll have an annual report, and the Chair, Mr Steve Freer, will come and present that report then, he'll come subsequently to Cabinet a couple of times a year as well. So I'm pleased to move the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I invite Councillor Chauhan to second it?
I second the report and I reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've one or two people that would like to address this issue. Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Chairman. I've just had an error pointed out to me in the membership of the board. Councillor Mercer's on there as a cabinet member, just to let you know that. I've spoken to the leader of my group about this report because obviously he's on the board. And he tells me that, in his view, one of the most significant contributions the board has made to date is in terms of championing the staff and recommending improved communications, and clearly that is a really, really important thing to do. So I'm glad about that, and I thank the board for that. But I have got some really serious concerns. We're living in very pressurised times, in a very pressurised context, without enough money for services, without enough capacity to deliver services, with everybody strapped for time. So one of my concerns is about duplication. So if you read key objectives 1 to 5, and particularly objectives 1, 2 and 5, these are surely the functions of the commissioners and therefore duplication. If you look at key objectives 3 and 4, these are the functions of the transformation team, and therefore, in my view, there is duplication going on. If we turn to page 23 and look at the membership of the team, you know, in the report it talks about the team being representative, but there's an astonishing lack of diversity that I find really incredible in this day and age. So of those 24 people, only 5 are women. We only have 1 person representing the voluntary sector. We have nobody, no trade union, we have nobody representing the staff, and nobody representing users or residents. I am seriously concerned about that as well. I would also like to ask, what is the cost of the board? In these times where, you know, we're looking after every halfpenny, we need to know how much this board is costing. And absolutely crucially, we need to know what difference it has made in the last 6 months and what difference it is going to make in the next 6 months and the 6 months after that. Because if it isn't making a difference, if there is duplication, if there are serious concerns about representation, we really need to ask again why we've got it there.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stamborough.
Thank you very much, Chair. looking specifically on page 19 at the paragraph at the bottom of the page, which talks about the local government reorganisation and the need of the county council continue to make progress in strengthening its financial position and its services so that they are in the best possible health at the point of transfer. I think that's absolutely right. That's something that the county council should be doing. And whilst welcoming some of the things that the districts and boroughs are doing across the county in the run-up to unitary status and to local government reorganisation, does the leader share with me my concerns that some of them are perhaps spending more money than they ought to now and therefore passing on a less than healthy financial position to the new unitaries in the future?
Thank you. Councillor Hakewell.
Thank you, Chairman. I did ask at Cabinet to address the point as to whether members, as opposed to members of the public, could actually attend and listen to the board. I never did get a direct answer to my question, but that's perhaps not unusual when you ask questions at Cabinet. But I do think it's disappointing that the work of this board goes on in private and that even the privilege of members who are bound by the codes of conduct of the council not to disclose, that we can't even sit in the background and listen to its deliberations. In the website of the council, I made the same point the same day as to the publishing of the minutes of the board. And I still can't find the website. The only site page I can find does talk about the board being keen to improve the accessibility of its work to the public and any other interested parties, blah, blah, blah. The board's terms of reference, minutes of all of its meetings. Now, if someone can tell me, perhaps the leader can, because he obviously has the right to reply, where I can access the minutes of the meetings of the board and where is the dedicated page that shows those. There's an overview, but no minutes. There are various other things, agendas, relevant papers. The County Council website will feature. So I asked this nearly 3 months ago, haven't had a reply. I'd like the leader, if you could just tell me, or send me a link straight away as to where I can find that. The one thing that everybody dislikes in the community is the thought that decisions are being made behind closed doors in secret without any really necessity for that. Accepted, sometimes you want the freedom of speech and debate within a meeting without the interjection of the members of the community, but we are all 57 of us elected to try and understand and absorb those things. So secret meetings, private meetings, no minutes, no agendas, simply says to the community, not really interested, sorry.
Thank you very much. Councillor Davenport.
Thank you, Chair. On page 18, under improving the council's financial position, I was pleased to see that you had reference to the county's external auditors who had identified significant errors in 17-18, and I'm thinking of the interim audit of 17-18, and where it stated that there were £600 million in 2 years, so that was 16-17, 17-18, of retrospective purchase orders. Now that's when the purchase order is signed after you've actually received the goods and purchased them, so we're not getting best value, etc. Now, I was told that that had come to an end. It was no longer possible with ERP Gold. But apparently, when I spoke to members of staff in finance, that it is still possible. And the reason I'm mentioning this, because not only is it a lot of money, but in the audit, it did state that we should be doing an analysis of this, you know, to find out why it happened, how it happened, and has it any real impact. I mean, there's always, you know, there could be fraud. Not saying there was, but that. So I would like to see that written, and I was disappointed that we haven't had more. And I have tried. I know it's supposed to be going to audit, and I've asked audit and I've heard nothing. The other thing is on children, with the Children's Commissioner and the changes there, which I've always been a fan of the Children's Commissioner, but just an observation that it just seems to be very slow progress. And when it comes to the employees and staff, and you say that you're engaging and listening to staff, I mean, I've spoken with staff, and it's a really difficult time for them at the moment. They've all got mortgages, they've all got houses, they've all got children, and a lot of people are worried about their jobs in the future. And I wondered, how are we supporting them, and are we offering services like counselling to, you know, enable them to go through this transition as best as they can in difficult situation? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Chowhan. Did you not want to speak? Sorry, it was just on my list, that was all. Yeah. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Chair. Drum roll, please. I just want to say that I agree with Councillor Stone. On the National Improvement Board, the issues that she brought up about diversity and representation is something that has concerned me. We've got two joint committees. In the North, we have 2 women out of 15 on there. I'm not sure how many you have in the West, but 1. Right. On the Oversight Committee, we have none. And on the Improvement Board, we have 5. Now, we actually have a really diverse chamber here, and I just think we need to be asking ourselves, why is that not translating into the groups that are moving us towards the unitary? And whilst we can't change that now, we need to, I think, keep a very close eye on it and make sure that the women that are representing there are empowered to actually have their voice heard.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mercer.
Just a minor point, as was pointed out, my name appears in the paperwork here, but I'm not a member of the Improvement Board. I was, but I came off it some time ago.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Could I invite Councillor Griffiths?
Thank you, Chairman. Following the last debate, I find it slightly ironic that Councillor Stone is asking for the cost of the Improvement Board. But I would say, what about the cost of not improving? The cost of not protecting our youngest and most vulnerable people and not giving the elderly a compassionate and dignity in their latter years. Councillor Stamborough mentioned about the districts and boroughs spending their hard-earned. That will be covered in the structural change orders that come from central government, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much for that. Can I invite Councillor Golby to reply?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll respond to the relevant points raised. The first thing to say is that this report was actually written back in April, so in one respect it is quite historical, and some of the points brought up about progress and things like children's services, you know, we've moved on since then. In terms of retrospective purchase orders, I have no knowledge of that, but I will check that and get some information sent to Councillor Davenport. Councillor Hakewell mentions about the website. I know that that was a request going back to when this was brought to Cabinet, and I do understand that the minutes are available on the website. So after this, we'll take it as an action that I will send a link round to everybody to that site, if that's okay. The points, Councillor Stamborough referenced spending amongst the different districts and boroughs. I think as this was an historical report, I have to say, and I refer to it in my report that I submitted, that there's a real good high level of maturity amongst the leaders of the districts and boroughs and the county in how we're working together on the whole unitary programme. And I think all the key decisions now have a link through into that programme, and there are there are mechanisms to make sure that nobody's doing anything silly, because it will have a detrimental effect on delivering the unitary. So I think there were some concerns quite a way back, but I'm satisfied that, and it's a credit to, I would say, the district and borough leaders and us, the county council, and the chief executives, that we're in a good place with the unitary work, and I would hope that that's reflected in the next iteration of this report to Council. Councillor Stone, my view of most of what Councillor Stone says is that you can't win. I think we try to open this up to be as diverse in terms of the representation of the organisations. We've got the voluntary sector on there. They're often a group that aren't always represented, and we made a point of asking them. And in terms of their representation, in terms of the gender mix, we ask people to send people along to the improvement board, and it's up to those organisations who they send. So if they happen to be mostly men or a mixture of men and women, that's what the people we have to deal with. In terms of the cost, the whole cost of the improvement board is funded by the LGA. The cost of the chair and his expenses, and all the admin is resourced through the LGA. And again, I have to thank them for that. And the whole point about the Councillor Stone makes about duplication, to me this is about transparency. We can reference the transformation work, the work of the commissioners, and all the other work that's going on in the council, but the point, and my original point of wanting an improvement board, is to make us as transparent as we can, to demonstrate to our partners that they can take some confidence in the fact that the council is doing the right thing and moving things forward. So on that account, Chair, I'm pleased to recommend the report.
Thank you very much. Could I invite Council to vote on the report? Those in favour? Against? Thank you very much. Item B is a report on a review of the Constitution. And could I ask Councillor Bowen to move the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. These changes are required as we move to the two unitaries and have been needed for some time now. The Commissioner's actually requested this review. Included are changes to children's, amendments as required as a result of the moving of fire to police and crime commissioner, a clear definition of chief officers, and the process around the appointments, disciplinary and appeals process. Also of note is the move of the responsibility for safety checks at sports grounds to the Police Directorate within NCC. This was held by the Chief Fire Officer. Within public health, there are necessary changes to the delegations to reflect the fact that as part of a reorganisation of services currently in progress, the coronial, libraries and registration services will be part of a new Corporate Services Directorate, and therefore moved away from the line management of the Director of Public Health. If you go to the addendum at the end of this section, you will see the detail of officer employment procedure rules and how there must be clear, robust lines of transparency between councillors and officers. This will hopefully provide additional clarity on governance and accountability. This is a very robust document, and the amendments have been made are part of an ongoing review of the Constitution. So I'm pleased to submit this report.
Thank you very much. Could I invite Councillor Patel to second it?
Mr. Chairman, pleased to second that, as this has been discussed and considered by the Councillors Working Group cross-party. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of speakers on this matter. Councillor Birch first.
Thank you, Chair. The part of this report that I'm really very concerned about is Article 4.1.2. Sustainable Community Strategy. It's proposed that this must be removed. Now, I would argue very, very strongly that this is exactly what we need as we move towards unitary authorities. We need sustainable communities, and we need a strategy in order to make this happen. We're going to be dealing with a number of different organisations. We need to bring them together, and we need to make sure that the work that they do is joined up, they work in partnership, and that a sustainable community is something that we all want to happen. I don't understand why this must be removed.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stone.
Thank you. I want to address the issue under 4.1.3, the Children and Young People's Plan. We're revoking the requirement for the council to produce that plan. I find this really quite astonishing, given where we are and all the experience we have got about silo working and silo planning, and the law of unintended consequences when we do that. So decision made over here has a negative impact on decisions made over there. And it seems to me that it's absolutely right to have a holistic and integrated view and plan for children and young people in one framework. And I don't really understand what the administration thinks is to be gained by revoking that policy. You know, we are not the puppets of government. We don't just do what government tells us we have got to do. We can exercise our own discretion. In my view, it's in the best interest of children and young people for us to have a children and young people's plan. And I would really ask us to put that back in. Thank you.
Councillor Strachan.
Thank you, Chairman. In view of a media report today on the condition of Northamptonshire Fire and Rescue Service, I'm making reference to 5.12 here. I'd like to make some comments. The Watchdog report, Chairman, state that the Fire and Rescue Service is requiring improvements. And it goes on to say and give examples of the lack of firefighters. It goes on to say the lack of fire engines and funding. 3 years ago, Chairman, we knew on this council that our fire engines were dated and up to 12 of them needed replacing. We did nothing. We talked about it. We went around the country and looked at new engines and that, but we did nothing. We knew also around that time, Chairman, that the firefighters' breathing apparatus and protective clothing needed replacing. Again, we did little or nothing. And coming on to the funding, in addition to these things, £5 million was taken out of the firefighters' budget.
Could I just chip in a minute, Councillor Strachan? It doesn't seem directly relevant to what we're talking about at the moment. I wondered if you could come back to what we're talking about.
Chairman, it talks about us transferring the Fire and Rescue Service to the Police and Crime Commissioner. It's in the report here. I'm not making it up.
Obviously not, but that has happened and been completed, yes.
It's completed, but this report is based on something sometime in November, just around the time when the service was transferred. We don't expect this.
I think we all share your concerns very much, but I think the point is clear that we are talking about this report rather than what's happened to the Fire and Rescue Service, which isn't part of our remit at the moment. Thank you very much.
We were responsible at that time for these sort of activities. This report is based on the time when we were responsible. We here are responsible for fire and rescue service. So I don't understand why it's not relevant. I'm sorry. I mean, it's your, Chairman, I don't want to argue, but I just don't understand why it's not relevant.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. We will note that. Thank you. The monitoring officer wanted to add a few comments to this as well, if I can introduce her.
I just thought I would clarify the questions raised by Councillors Stone and Birch on 4.1.2 and 4.1.3 of the report. Those actions have been taken to amend requirements in the Constitution that matters that have been repealed in legislation should be complied with. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Could I ask Councillor Bowen to comment on the remarks?
Yes, I was going to say something similar to Susan Zeiss. We do actually have a cross-party team that actually input into the Constitution from every facet of the political makeup of this council. So that is the time for some of the concerns that you've raised to be highlighted, so that when it comes to here, those comments have already been reflected. So I would just like to point that out. And going back to Councillor Strachan, this is, again, as we've just said, it is about changes to the Constitution. It is not about what has gone in the past. This is about what is going on in the future. So I'm afraid we have to make those comments irrelevant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I invite Council to vote on the report? Those in favour? Great. Anyone against? Thank you very much. Our next item, item C, is the use of capital receipts. And I'd like to ask Councillor Golby to move the report.
Councillor Longley's going to move the report, Chair.
Sorry? Oh, I'm sorry about that. Yes, Councillor Longley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's a fairly short report, and it's those of you that were at the budget meeting will remember me talking about productivity improvements, and this is really what this report's all about. It's clearly a work in progress, and it's really a report back at a snapshot in time. But if you turn to the Appendix A and look at items 1, those are the rules of engagement, and we have to stick very clearly to those. And then if you then look to the two tables, the first will show that the productivity improvements that are funded by the use of capital receipts in 2018-19 in Table 1, and those that are intended to be for this coming financial year are in Table 2. What I would suggest here that, and these will run through into the unitary situation, anybody that is interested in the detail of these, myself or the officers involved would be delighted to enlighten you further. So I would recommend this report for you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Golby, are you going to second it?
Yeah, I'm happy to second and reserve my right to speak, Chair.
Thank you very much. Two or three speakers on this matter. Councillor Grimshaw.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, the only thing, I just want to make a couple of points. I mean, obviously, any suggestion to use flexible capital receipts for anything other than capital projects naturally raises concerns, I suspect, to all NCC councillors, given the recent track record that we've had here, where we sort of previously fell foul of these rules, which in turn led obviously to the council's external auditor stepping in. I hope very much now that those required lessons have been learnt, and I'm happy to acknowledge that the government commissioners are now in charge of the sort of finer details around this, because as we move towards unitary, the transformation of NCC services is going to be vital. There's no way that the proposed new councils will be able to meet their future financial obligations without this. They're already going to have all the legacy debt issues from this council to deal with, along with the continuing demand pressures in social care, coupled with a national funding system on that particular issue that is still unfit for purpose, despite national politicians talking again and again about the need for change and improvement. The funding of this transformation is therefore a vital part of these councils' future financial stability. And the concern is that either the transformation work currently going on and currently required either won't bring about the necessary efficiencies required, or that it won't happen in the time scales needed, both of which are real potential risks. We're about to spend millions of pounds on this work, and if we get it wrong, it will potentially have consequences for years to come moving on to those councils. So I would just simply urge the council as a whole not only to treat this issue with the seriousness that it deserves, but to monitor and watch very closely what happens over the next few months and year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other speakers? Councillor Stamber.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll try and limit it to a question. So, looking at page 46, the section on risks around this report, strategy, document, call it what you will, I'd venture to suggest that there might be a third risk that ought to be added to that list, which is the risk that the Council's auditors don't sign off the expenditure that we have deemed to be flexible use of capital receipts. So my question is, has there been discussion with the Council's auditors around this strategy document? Have we sought their approval for the expenditure that we're planning to deem as flexible use of capital receipts? Because history tells us, I think, that perhaps that would be a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I ask Councillor Longley to reply?
Well, I think I'd better start off by saying to both our councillors over there that we're very much alive to recent history, as you could well imagine. And in the case of yourself, Councillor Scrimshaw, the best way to answer your question, I think, is to again point out the Appendix A, Item 1, the rules and regs, if you like, of our utilising this. And I can assure you that we're very, very conscious of sticking to those rules. We not only have these government rules and history and all the scars that have left, but we've got our commissioners there at Eagle Eyes, and we've got a very good team as well. I would be absolutely staggered if we had the slightest hint of not achieving these goals via that route. So that answer, as far as the auditors are concerned, again, so very conscious of this situation. And you've got to bear in mind that we're not talking about the 17-18. We have yet to have those signed off. We understand that. But these are 18, 19 and 19-20 numbers. Different situation entirely. So I hope that answers the questions, and I'd recommend this report to this council.
Thank you very much. Those in favour of the report? Against? Thank you very much. Item D, Treasury Management Report, and Councillor Longley again, according to my list, is going to propose it.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, you got it, it's me. Well, as you probably see, this is a very detailed report. There's a lot of detail in it. It's an end-of-year situation. These come up quarterly, as you may recall. I don't propose to go into the detail of this. It's a technical report. I'm very, very happy to respond if anybody wishes to have more detail later date. But the gist of it is that we're well within our borrowing limits. And in fact, as you probably see from the best one to look at is probably item 6, which will explain the summary of it. And we're effectively using 135 million worth of cash to down our borrowings. Also, this last year, we've actually managed to reduce our anticipated interest by a little over £11 million. So, all in all, the report is steady as she goes, and I think we're going in the right direction. I'd like to recommend this report for.
Thank you very much. Councillor Clark, are you going to second it?
Pleased to second that, Mr Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stamborough.
Thank you very much, Chair. So, as usual at the end of this report, we have a little, what they call it, an economic update provided by Link Asset Services. And if you turn to paragraph, I think it's 5 dot something or other of the report, 5, that's summarised for us. And 5.2, paragraph 5.2 tells us that the significant UK headlines of this analysis were that Brexit uncertainty continues to dominate. Well, who knew? And that bank rate has remained unchanged. Well, clearly that report is worth every penny that we pay for it, for those 2 pieces of insight. More seriously, there's a chart at paragraph 7.4 on page 50, which shows our borrowing profile. And whilst it's not the easiest chart in the world to understand, it looks like what it's saying is that it's about £21 million worth of loans with the PWLB likely to mature in the not too distant future. By my rough calculations, we're probably paying interest on those loans every year of, say, let's between £600,000 and £800,000 a year. And if we were to roll those loans over into the much lower interest rate market local authority options, or even short-term borrowing, which is at just over 1%, there's a significant saving to be made on revenue costs. Is it the intention of this council to achieve that saving, please?
Thank you very much. Councillor Scrimshaw, did you want to speak?
Thank you for the opportunity, Chair. Yes, and like most councillors, I actually love Treasury management, and it is, even though, as the portfolio holder points out, it is quite technical, it's such an important part of dealing with the council's finances efficiently. I note that in 4.1, our in-house investment returns compare well to the indicators that we use. But I have for many years suggested we actually compare this not to some arbitrary national figures, but actually compare ourselves to the performance of other similar councils. I've pretty much given up on that suggestion ever being adopted, but I raise the idea again, just so if there's anybody currently sitting in this chamber who may end up on the 2 new unitaries, they might want to consider that for their new councils. I genuinely think it will give a much better indicator of how this council is performing in reality. We and the new councils coming are still tied to £130 million of LOBO loans, which are referred to in this report, for decades ahead. And given the details of these loans and the inflexible terms they still have a real potential to have impacts in the future, maybe many, many years ahead. And again, I'm raising this once more, perhaps for the benefit of anybody in charge of those new authorities in the future, so they're at least aware of the risk. And I do appreciate the difficulty of renegotiating them, of getting out of them, because of the, well, frankly, ridiculous terms that we signed up to originally. I do welcome the small reduction in overall borrowing, although would obviously still wish further reductions going forward, although again realise that that may also become an issue for the unitaries rather than NCC, simply because of the relatively short timescales we have, you know, for local government reform. We still also have financial risks about our investments in both the Municipal Bonds Agency and also the loan to LGSS law, which again are mentioned in the report, and I would welcome perhaps any further update about what the future of those may bring, which again I currently see as both of those being a particular risk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Longley, could you sum up?
Thank you, Chair. Well, thank you for those couple of questions, councillors. As you all know, that we meet on a fairly regular basis and have these sort of chats about where we're going. So we like to try and keep Councillor Scrimshaw and Stamborough as well informed as we can, and you can clearly see they are. And in both cases, I'd start by saying thank you very much indeed for the suggestions. They're actually quite good ones. As far as the rolling over of loans, clearly a good approach to go. And a comparison with other councils, yeah, it's a good idea. I'll ask those questions. Very good idea. I'm not going to dwell on LOBO loans, it's all been said before. But I would go on to the municipal bonds. We did make a provision in last year's accounts for that. So perhaps I'll give you more detail of that at some other date. But other than those items, I'd recommend this report to this council, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Could I ask Council to vote on the item? Those in favour? Anyone against? Thank you very much. Item E next is the Advisory Council for Religious Education, and the report is going to be proposed by Councillor Baker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This report, which is for information only, is for the Standing Advisory Council for Religious Education. This is a statutory duty for the Council. The purpose of this report is to improve the quality of provision for religious education and collective worship throughout our schools, to give our young people a greater knowledge and understanding of all the cultures that are in our county. We are making some changes to how this advice will be distributed in the future to our schools, as you will have seen from your papers. We will no longer have a shared RE advisor. We instead will seek local lead teachers of religious education to act as the RE advisor and members of the school effectiveness team. This will encourage a positive partnership between SACRE and the schools. The costs will be reduced from 8.4 to 2.8 in this academic year. The locally agreed syllabus, which was launched on the 3rd of May 2018, was created with input from faith groups and all of those with no faith as well. Several events were held throughout the year to support the delivery of the syllabus to schools, including teachers and young people. There has been a reduction in the GCSE entries for religious education from 7,650 in 2016 to 1,653 in 2018. We have done some research into this and feel that actually this is probably a national fall due to the school's focus on the EBAC situation of the academic subjects that young people have to now take. So I'm recommending this report to you. This is funded by the DofE and is for information only. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Could I ask Councillor Hughes to second the...
Thank you. In standing to second this, I'd like to thank, on behalf of us all the teachers and so on who give up their time to make this report, which, as you've correctly been told, is statutory, so we have no opportunity, we have no alternative but to do it, and the people who do it basically do it for nothing. So I think on behalf of the Council, I'd like to say thank you to them. And the second thing I'd like to say is, why do we do RE? Well, there's never been a time, I don't think, ever, when in this county and in this country, when we shouldn't be telling people more about different faiths and different religions, so that they understand them, not so they believe in them, but that's an entirely personal choice outside our remit and outside the remit of public education, but so they understand them, so that, in fact, they don't laugh and they don't cause so much trouble, and we have a better way of working together. So I'm delighted to second this report and to thank the work of the people who produced it.
Thank you for those comments. Does anyone want to speak to the motion? Councillor Bowen?
Yes, just a very quick comment to say I thought the report was very detailed and thorough. I was absolutely astounded by the reduction in the number of children going into GCSEs and A-levels in religious education, and I think that's a shame given the multicultural faith that we have here in the county. So that was just an observation.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Would you like to sum up, Councillor Baker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thoroughly agree with my colleague, Councillor Bowen. I too was really shocked to see this. I have made some investigations into schools to see how this was happening,
and it may be a report we bring back on another occasion. But thank you very much. I'd like to propose this paper to the Council.
Great, thank you very much. We look forward to that. Those in favour of the report? Anyone against? Okay, thank you very much. I noticed from the time that we are running roughly on schedule, which is really good, but I would propose that we had a slightly shortened lunch break and that we came back here for 1:30, thoroughly refreshed and ready for an afternoon session. So back at 1:30, and thank you very much for the morning session.